there, everyone. I'm Anne Andersen. I'm a teaching artist with the Methow Arts Alliance, which is a nonprofit arts organization located in Twisp, Washington. I'm here with you today to do a writing lesson. And even though I would normally be doing this with you in your classroom, and I'm here in the studio doing it, and you're at home, I think that we can work together and make this a lesson that feels like we are working on it together. So first of all, before we start, I'd like to give you a little bit of time to run and get a couple of pieces of paper and a pencil. We're going to be using those throughout the lesson. So you can stop the video right now and run and get the materials you need and bring them back and then start the video again. All right, are you back? And you have your pencil and paper ready? Today we're gonna do some writing. We're gonna do some pre-writing, which means this is the kind of thinking that authors do before they start to write. And you know, one of the things I like to say to my students is that authors and writers write what they know. Whether they're writing fiction or nonfiction, it doesn't matter. They write about things that they know and they've experienced. So what we're going to do today is to do an activity that will help you think about the things that you know about and that you've experienced, and then you can use those things later in your writing. So we're going to do an activity called Mapping Your Neighborhood. And this is a perfect activity for you to do if you're working at home on your schoolwork, because obviously you're in your neighborhood is right around you, and so you can step outside of your house and look around as you're working on your neighborhood map. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to make a very, very simple map of your neighborhood. And when I say simple, this is not an activity, this is not an art activity. The drawing that you're going to do of your neighborhood can really just be very, very simple. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it. But we are going to use it and we're going to work on it later. So if you have a larger piece of paper, you could start with that larger piece of paper. Right now, I am going to demonstrate on my own piece of paper here, and I want you to look at what I'm doing, and I'll kind of talk my way as I work on my neighborhood map. I'll talk to you about the kind of things that I'm putting on my map that maybe you can put on your map as well. Okay, I'm going to draw my map and talk about it as I draw it. If you would just watch, then after I'm finished, you'll have some time to work on your map as well. So first of all, I've decided I'm going to draw a map of the neighborhood that I lived in when I was 8 or 9 years old, so probably the same age that many of you are right now. And I'm going to start out by just drawing a line that is the street that I lived on, and it was called Alamance Drive. I'm going to put a little box right here. Maybe I'll make a little roof for it. That was my house on Alamance Drive. And then I'm just going to put a box across the street. We had a neighbor across the street. We had one next door, and then we had one at the end of the road right there. And I'm just going to use boxes. I'm not going to try to make them actually look like houses. Behind my house, so there were lots of woods up here. This was a kind of a wooded area. I'm just going to make some trees. I had pine trees in my yard, all over my yard. So I know those don't look much like trees, but I know what they are, and that's all that matters, right? Behind my house, there were several things that I remember really well. One is a path that went in the woods, and it went around like this, and that path went all the way to my friend's house. So my friends lived right here. And I could walk on that path all the way to their house. And there were woods along the way. It was a wooded path. Kind of dark and yeah. Another thing that I remember is that when I was about 9 or 10 years old, my dad built me a swing. And he took 2 pine trees like this, and he built the swing in between them, and it was a long swing, kind of like that. And that was a kind of a big deal for me because I loved swinging and I loved having a swing in my backyard. And then another thing that I remember, I loved horses, but I didn't have a horse of my own, so I remember that I had a pretend horse ring right outside of my house, and I used to go outside and pretend like I was riding my horse in that ring. So those are kind of the things I remember. That this was my best friend, another one of my best friends lived in this house right here, and I remember that her dad had built her a pulley that went between 2 trees. It was kind of a long pulley and it had a T-bar on the end, so we would ride that T-bar pulley up and down when I went to visit her house. And then the final thing that I remember is that there were neighbors across the street from us, and they were boys, and so I didn't really, most of the time I just played with them in the neighborhood. I didn't have a lot of girls unless I went to visit my friends up here. So I remember the boys that lived in the house there. Okay, so that's the kind of map I want you to do. You can put lots of other things on your map. You can put, if you live in a town or a city, you can put stores, you can put parks, you can put places where there are animals, in a pasture maybe, or pets that people have. Really you can put anything on your map that you want that is important to you in some way. But this is just a kind of an example of what your neighborhood map might start by looking at. So right now I want you to turn off the video and spend some time drawing your own map of your own neighborhood. And then when you're finished, bring it back and turn the video on again, and I'm going to show you some things that we'll do with this map. Okay? All right. I hope you have your map, and I hope you have lots of interesting things on your map. So let me show you what you can do with your map now. This map is actually something that I keep in my journal. So if I've done it on a big piece of paper, when I finish, I might fold it up and tuck it into my writing folder or my writing journal, because this is something I might keep adding to this when I think of new things. I might keep adding to my map. But I'm surely going to come back to it for ideas for my writing. So when I look at my map, I told you about some of the things I put on here, and they remind me of some little stories about things that happened in my neighborhood. For example, I remember that when my dad built the swing in the trees, I remember I wanted him to make it the highest swing he could possibly make, because I wanted to be able to swing out so far that my feet would be almost level with the top of the swing. I wanted it to be a really, really big swing. And so I remember that he really did try to do that, and that sometimes I would swing so high in that swing that it would be scary. The other thing that I remember is that our house was surrounded with pine trees, and that meant we had pine needles all over the ground. And so when we would play in the yard, we would take a rake and rake the pine needles into piles, and sometimes we would pile them up and make rooms and then houses and neighborhoods of rooms and houses that we could play in. And all we really had to make those with were the pine needles underneath our trees. So on my map, I'm going to put a notation here that my swing was high and scary. And that's just to remind me that that's something I could write about. And then under the pine trees here, I'm going to put pine needle houses. And I'm going to put a circle. And then another thing that I remember is this path. It went through the woods, so you couldn't see these houses. And so sometimes my friends and I would meet in the middle, and we would have a snack. We would sit there and have a snack, and we would know that nobody could see us. We were kind of hidden, and it felt a little bit secretive. It felt like we had a secret. So I'm going to put a secret snack stop right there to remind myself that that's what happened. And then finally, the other thing that I remember is that this house across the street from us, the people in that house had a television, a big television, and they were the first ones in the neighborhood to have a big television like that. And so we would sneak over to their house and peek in their windows and watch whatever it was they were watching on their television. So I'm going to put that down as well. Finally, my parents got a television too, but for a long time we had to sneak over and look in the window of our neighbor's house. So again, I'm going to give you a little bit of time now. I'm going to ask you to turn off the video and go and write down some things on your map that you remember that have happened. They can be happy things, they can be sad things, they can be funny things, they can even be scary things. They can be about people or animals, adventures that you've had. But write them down on your map so that later on you can come back and choose to write a little story about the things you've written on your map. Okay, I hope you've got lots of great ideas written down on your map. And again, you can keep adding them as long as you want. You can keep this map for a very long time and keep adding ideas. The next step that we're going to do is one that may take you a little while, but I'm going to actually show you by reading some writing that I've done, how I used my map to give me ideas for writing. And I hope that you will hear my ideas and then use your ideas in the same way in your own writing. All right, so I have this map. I have a map like this in my journal, and I've used it for a lot of writing that I've done. And I just want to share some of that writing with you so that it will give you an idea of how you can use your map in the future. So the first little paragraph that I'm going to read to you is about this area of my map right here. Remember I said there were pine needles there? So this is the paragraph that I wrote about that part of my map. When I was 8 years old in North Carolina, we lived in a 2-story house surrounded by pine trees. When no one was around, I would rake the needles into long, skinny mounds between 2 trees to make pretend walls. I would create rooms, and then a house, and then a story to go with my house. I cried when my brother kicked my pine needle walls over, ruining my make-believe game. Okay, and then the second part of the writing, the second paragraph that I wrote was about this path. I told you this was a path to my friend's house, and that sometimes we would stop along the way. When I was 8 years old in North Carolina, there was a long path through the woods behind my house. The path went down a hill, into a steep ravine, up a hill, and ended at my best friend's back door. We would use this path to meet each other in secret. Sometimes we would bring peanut butter crackers to snack on when we met in the middle. All right, and the final paragraph is about that swing that I told you about. When I was 8 years old in North Carolina, my father built me a swing out of rope and a wooden board. He attached it high up in 2 pine trees. I would go to the swing when I had things to think about. I would pump my legs until I was swinging way above the ground. Sometimes I went so high that I scared myself, but I never fell out. Thank you for letting me share my writing with you, and for sharing the idea of a neighborhood map with you. I really, really hope that you can use this kind of a pre-writing strategy to give you ideas for your writing. And I look forward in the near future when we can be together in the same space. I look forward to coming to your school and into your classroom and just seeing what kind of writing you've done with this strategy.